Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the plastic shells. You can actually buy these on my store online if you don't have a 3D printer but you still want to build this. They're like 30 bucks. But you have two options. Option number one is the fancy joystick. That just means that this hole is a little smaller. Option number two is the more expensive joystick. The only difference between the two, again, actually is just the hole. They're both the same. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to work on the wiring for the battery plate as well. So the battery plate is, in this case, a V-mount. It also has the ability to basically tell what power is coming through it to the USB-C to the Mimic. That was really the only way I could figure out how to get power actually to the Mimic without having another, cable. And also the reason that I went with this power module is because you can actually see it and you don't need a voltage meter to tell what voltage is coming through. So I figure people don't want to buy extra tools, and this is only a couple of dollars more, so might as well get it. So now we're going to go over the wiring for that, and in this case I'm going to be using a gold mount because gold mount is superior, and that's all I'm going to say about that. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to have your plate here, and there's going to be two sets of wires coming off it. You're going to have these guys right here, which are your main wires that go to your camera usually, and then you're going to have your D-tap or P-tap or whatever people call them these days coming off the side. So if you want, this is another extra step, and I will link it in the description below, but I also somewhat recommend it, is getting these fuses. These are insanely cheap. They're like, I don't know, 10 cents a fuse or something crazy like that, or for 4. And these are the exact same fuses that wooden camera uses in their plates, so I highly recommend getting a fuse if you are into that, and the fuse only needs to go on the P-tap side. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to wire up your fuses. So again, we're just going to put a little solder on this tip here, and then we're going to move over to the fuse. And you can do this for any, if I also, on my Thingiverse, I have a gold mount plate as well that if you own like a red DSMC1, it works for it. But you're going to just hold this down on the fuse until it gets a nice little connection. You're going to take your pre-tinned wire and go ahead and connect that facing this way. You should be good to go. And then we're going to go over to the other side of the fuse, and we're going to pre-tin that as well. And again, as hot as you can, or maybe not as hot as you can, but you want to get it pretty high up, maybe around the 400 to, around the 400 to 350 area, because these wires are not super susceptible to heat in general. So we're going to go ahead and, what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and cut this wire here that goes to the P-tap. Or D-tap. I honestly don't know what the difference is. And we're going to go ahead and take it out so that we can have access to the wire, which is right here. You're going to get your wire cutters and strip those bad boys. We're going to want to do, just in case this actually happens, because it probably won't, but it's nice to do anyway, is your fuse, when they do pop, if they do pop, which they hopefully won't, again, because electronics are made to last, he said, buying mostly Chinese electronics. Electronics aren't made to last, therefore, you want to have your heat shrink just so it's a little bit better protected. But we're going to go ahead and solder this guy to this right here. Pardon my semi-balding head. All right, and then we're going to do the same thing on the fuse. Making sure that we actually cover up the glass part of the fuse, because if you don't cover that up, and it explodes inside here. And explodes is a mild word. When these things pop, it's a very subtle pop. It's not like it like flies everywhere or something crazy like that. It's, again, very subtle. I'm just going to go ahead and attach these bad boys back in. And so you want to make sure also that when you are using this lever, it doesn't hit the fuse. I mean, it doesn't really matter that much. It'll probably be fine either way, but good practice. All right, so now what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and grab your DC to DC step-down converter. This is, again, a really big one. Super unnecessary how big it is, but I don't have a voltage reader or voltage regulator or whatever that I can test out the voltage. And If you do, then you can feel free to use a smaller one as long as it's around 6.5 volts, 5.6 volts in that area, because that's kind of the charging rate that most USB-C stuff uses. So in order to get this guy to actually fit super proper, we have to do some kind of jank stuff right here. But we'll get to that in a second. So right now, off the bat, you're going to see you have your voltage in and your voltage in on one side and your voltage out on the other side. So we're going to wire in the voltage in first, obviously, because we kind of have to. And you can just kind of cram this however you like. But in general, what I like to do is I like to put solder on these two pads right here, and then that gives it a pretty secure connection. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to just tin these wires here. Okay, cool. Now that that's all wired in, we're going to cram this bad boy in here best we can. Cool, so that kind of fits nicely in there like that. All right, so now you're going to take some hot glue, put a little on where it contacts the area. Make sure you also try and cover these pins here, because you don't want a little bit of, you don't want a little voltage to leak through. That'd be a bad boo-boo to make. We're going to go ahead and put that like that, just so it covers it up. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and, so this is a necessary step. You might be wondering why I'm doing it this way, and it's because, one, you're going to want to take off this back plate probably pretty often if you're like, you know, uploading software. Right? No, you don't really need to take it off for uploading software, but in general, if there's something wrong with it, you're going to want to take off the back plate, right? The only way for wires to get from the back plate is by obviously connecting them to the motherboard, but you don't want to take off the motherboard every time. So, long story short, you take one of these little pins that's included in the description, obviously in the parts list that you need. You cut two of them out, and we're going to put them in these out pins right here. That way you can just use like a regular wire connection onto them. And we're going to go ahead and put a little solder boy in here, into the out. So as you can see, we have our gold mount plate all wired up and ready to go. Hot glue in place, all that sort of thing. So, and you have your, make sure you have your two pins here wired already. So, I'm going to put this aside for now, and we're going to take a look at the plastic. So, in order to have the inserts work properly, you have these nuts here, right? You have these are M3 nuts. You'll notice when you're putting these in that they're a little too big for the nut hole. That's intentional, because what you're going to have to do is you're going to take your soldering iron, right? And you're going to put the nut on it. Ow. And you're going to heat it up so that it gets nice and hot. And you're going to insert it into the hole like so. And the reason we're doing this instead of like a snug fit like you would normally do is because the plastic on a microscopic level surrounds the top of the screw and makes it so that it keeps it in place. This is super useful if you want to have a load-bearing insert and it's facing the wrong way. That being said, you can also put a little glue on top and that will help it stay in place a little better. But there it is. So we're going to do that for all 4 inserts. You're going to go ahead and slap that bad boy on here. And we're going to go ahead and slap it the wrong way, and now slap it the right way. And as you can see, these holes will potentially match up with each other. And you're just going to take some M4 bolts. It doesn't matter necessarily. Let me see what size these are. I think these will probably fit. No, you need a little longer than that. Let's take these. These are 20 mil, 25 mil, somewhere around there. Those will work. I'm just going to slap this guy into place. All right, so what you're going to do, you're going to get your battery plate ready and make sure it's facing the right way. And go ahead and plug it in. First, you're going to see you have your voltage here. This is your voltage out. That's really all we care about. And you're going to get a flathead screwdriver and manipulate it so that we have a little less voltage. This is the potentiometer right here, and then you're going to turn that. I'll turn with my left hand so that you can see. I'm just going to keep going until something happens. There we go. All right, and you're going to want to turn this all the way down to, let's do 5.6 to be healthy. Normally, just 5 volts is kind of what phones and stuff charge off of. I like to have a little more so that the Mimic can kind of keep up with it, and the Mimic can handle it. It has a pretty sophisticated power delivery system.